This video is brought to you by America First Insight. Help support the growing conservative movement by becoming a member today. And if you want to support this channel, you can also use the code REAL when becoming a member. Thank you and enjoy the video. I really thought that I think most people would agree with me that after the 2024 election, after the Republican Party gain a trifecta, have a conservative leaning Supreme Court, and really a mandate from the American people to basically do whatever the hell they want to do to fix this country, that at the bare minimum, the Republican majority would try to fix most issues. And let's be clear, there has been good progress made on multiple fronts, such as immigration. The big, beautiful bill funded ICE and Border Patrol to do a lot more deportations, secure the border, building the wall. There has been good stuff. But the more you look at it, it becomes apparent that it's still been a big disappointment. And I know we blame Trump for a lot of issues with the administration. Now, let's be clear. Yes, there's been some major mistakes by President Trump and other people in the admin related to stuff like not enough deportations, baffling messaging on the economy, stuff like that. And those are valid criticisms of this administration. They've not been perfect. Nobody's perfect. There are going to be mistakes made by the admin. But at the same time, I do think some of the criticisms surrounding Trump, some of it's just ridiculous, it's nonsensical, and really, a large chunk of the issues that Trump is dealing with is because how utterly worthless the Senate GOP really is. We knew from the get-go that the Senate Republicans, they were going to be a problem, but never in a million years did I or really anyone else think it would be this pathetic. Because compared to 10 years ago, the Senate GOP still has a lot of bad people like McConnell, like Tom Tillis, like Murkowski. But compared to 10 years ago, this is a far better delegation. Same thing with the House. The House GOP, they have some big issues, but guess what? They've gotten significantly better compared to 8 years ago by big margins. And we were getting better people in leadership. No more Mitch McConnell's. And I know John Thune was never the best choice, but I thought from the get-go, and he's done some good stuff, that Thune would be a serious upgrade. Just for the simple fact that he's not Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell 10 years ago was an okay leader. In fact, in some areas, he was actually pretty effective. But in the last couple of years, he went off the rails, went off the deep end, Orange Man bad, really messed with him. And now everything's Orange Man bad. Everything he does is to spite him. That's Mitch McConnell now. Just getting rid of that with John Thune, who I know, not perfect, was an upgrade. But at this point, I really don't know if it really is an upgrade. A couple weeks ago, I was thinking, and saying that, yeah, this was a slight, like a 2% upgrade or whatever. It's better, but not as good as we need it to be. At this point, after what happened a couple days ago, I have no clue. But for those that don't know, a couple days ago, the Senate finally passed DHS funding after weeks of bullshit with the Senate Democrats pushing nonsensical hysteria. They finally agreed to funding DHS. And at first, this looks good. Like, oh, this sounds great, actually. We finally got out of the garbage shutdown the Democrats forced. But the more people looked at what John Thune did, the more apparent it became that this is an awful agreement that John Thune did. Let's start the initial passage of the package, because already you could tell there are some serious problems with what John Thune did. So this passed 2 in the morning, okay? Very early in the morning. So you would think, okay, if this passed very early in the morning or whatever, every senator was there, or the vast majority of them, and they passed it. Nope. That's not what happened. In fact, there was like 5 people in the Senate when this occurred. It was a voice vote. Like 5 people showed up, including Thune, and they ran through other worthless resolutions, such as a plant month resolution and a random awareness week resolution. Wow, that is some very important stuff to be passing in the middle of the night. And oh, by the way, funding for DHS without Border Patrol and ICE funding. Yeah, without ICE or Border Patrol funding. Now, to be fair to Thune, a lot of people, including myself, we kind of knew this was kind of an agreement they were working on. The idea was the Senate would not fund deportation efforts, okay? That they would separate that into reconciliation, make it a separate package, and it just needs a simple majority. Plus, ICE and Border Patrol are already funded via the big, beautiful bill, okay? So, technically speaking, this wouldn't really impact anything of note. It would impact a tiny bit of funding for deportations, but really it doesn't change much. And through reconciliation, the Senate GOP would ram it through in like a week. Well, that's not what Thune did. It wasn't just money meant for deportations that they cut out. And again, no matter what happens here, the money via the big, beautiful bill is still there for deportations. That's not being touched. I should be clear about that. There's been some miscommunication about it, but still, John Thune agreed to no funding for ICE or Border Patrol in this agreement. Not just for deportations, but for any of it, including Border Patrol. You can't make this up. So, not just for some deportation efforts and they're going to fund it through reconciliation. No, John Thune is forcing through an agreement that essentially defunds large parts of Border Patrol and ICE. I'm not even making this up. Look at this right here. Most of ICE and Border Patrol are funded through 2029 via the One Big Beautiful Bill, and operations won't be impacted if they aren't funded through appropriations for now. All frontline law enforcement is being paid. The ICE, Border Patrol, and other agents we see in the field are getting paid via the One Big Beautiful Bill. So again, the raids, the deportations, that stuff is not impacted by this deal, not really. However, their professional and civilian support staff are not being paid. These are people who work in the computers, the public affairs offices, and other support staff who are on the front line making immigration arrests, but are supporting the agents who are. These civilian support staffers haven't been paid for almost half of the last 6 months. When you factor in the prior shutdown last fall, they feel left behind and feel they have no light at the end of the tunnel, with the Senate bill leaving Border Patrol and ICE unfunded through appropriations. They would have to hope GOP could take care of them in a future reconciliation bill, or that more funds could be moved around to pay them. Yeah. So John Thune agreed to this nonsense that not only defunded parts of deportations, which again, that was kind of the agreement. It was a technicality. Not just that part, all of Border Patrol and ICE, including these random staffers they're not on the front lines. They're the ones dealing with the bullshit behind the scenes. You know, the people that actually make the operation run smoothly. Yeah, this is the scam John Thune pushed. And right here, a lot of these staffers are not happy, and for good reason. The Senate bill paid TSA, but thousands of Border Patrol and ICE professional staff will not be paid. The last paid workday for me was February 13th. Now sent on paid vacation until April 13, and that is a guarantee for 2 more months, no pay. Very likely we won't be paid until May if Johnson lets this pass. And others say the same thing. I've not been paid in months. I can't get paid because, yeah, really, Thune? This is the shit you agreed to? And by the way, yeah, like it says here, he immediately left. Within like 5 minutes of this agreement going through, he just expected the House to pass it without any problems, got on a plane, and vanished. I'm not even joking. He actually did this. Seriously? So you screw over everybody, push through this horse shit in the middle of the night that defunds large chunks of Border Patrol and ICE, not just some money that really wouldn't impact anything. No, stuff that would essentially stop deportations because it would destroy the funding for random staffers. Not only that, you leave at the 11th hour to go on your bullshit vacation. Seriously, this is one of the most stunning betrayals I've ever seen. initially I was like, okay, I support the agreement because I thought, oh, it's just random funding for deportations that really doesn't impact anything. But I never thought they actually agreed to defund all of ICE and all of Border Patrol. Again, the big beautiful bill is still there. It's still funding some deportation efforts, or I should say the majority of it. But still, this essentially guts the main operations for ICE and Border Patrol. But what makes this even worse is that he didn't immediately get to work on reconciliation. He gets on a plane and vanishes. Seriously, this is a big fuck you to not only millions of average people, not just to the staffers, not even just to President Trump, but even Speaker Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson is not happy about this. And for good reason. Mike Johnson is furious about this because Mike Johnson was doing everything he could to get through an agreement, force it through, and he got multiple packages through the House with even some Democrats voting yes. It was like 2 or 3 or whatever, but still, he was forcing stuff through. But guess what? John Thune handed him a pile of crap. And now Mike Johnson has to clean up the mess John Thune left him as he got on a plane and immediately vanished right after he forced this shit through. Unbelievable. I'm not even exaggerating. That's what he did. And the worst part about this is now you force the GOP to be on the defense because now Democrats can say, see, we're going to fund TSA and all this other stuff, but the House Republicans, they don't want to fund TSA. That's the other issue. It's an optics disaster. You just fucked over your own party. Trump isn't happy. Mike Johnson is furious right now. And you get on a plane and leave? You just screwed everybody over. And nobody in the House GOP are happy about this. Keith Self of Texas. In the middle of the night, the U.S. Senate decided no paychecks for Border Patrol non-law enforcement personnel, no paychecks for ICE non-law enforcement personnel, no funding for day-to-day operations of both agencies, prohibit transferring funds to any Border Patrol operations. So it's even worse than I thought. John Thune fucked over everybody, pushed through this pile of shit, and leaves. This is insane. I thought it was just some funding for deportation efforts from Border Patrol and ICE or whatever. No, it's not just that. It is all this other crap where essentially it guts ICE and Border Patrol indirectly or hell, directly, because now all these staffers are not going to get paid. Seriously, this is crazy. And really, after this whole debacle, I posted this. Mike Johnson and fucking Tom Emmer have a historically small majority. And really, when you factor in Thomas Massie and Don Bacon, they have no real majority. Yet somehow these two have been able to get through 99.9% of what Trump wants without really, much issues. There's been some hiccups here and there, but really, they got to force something through. They eventually get it through. But John Thune, and I know people are going to argue that he has a filibuster to deal with. I get that. But he has a bigger majority than Mike Johnson has. And I know you got to deal with Mitch McConnell and a few others, but so does Mike Johnson and Tom Emmer. They have to deal with these assholes like Massie. Even with that, Tom Emmer and Mike Johnson, they get stuff through. But Thune, he doesn't even try. That's the worst part about this. He doesn't even try. And then, in the middle of the night, he gives Democrats everything they wanted. And now you just screwed over your own party. John Thune's got to go. After this debacle, how can anyone defend him? He's got to be forced out immediately. Force him out of power right now. He's got to resign. This is an embarrassment. And a lot of people in the Senate, and especially the House, they're openly saying it now. Not really in the Senate, but in the House. You have a bunch of Republicans saying, this guy's got to go. He just fucked over everybody, and he bailed. And I agree, he's got to go now. You got to find somebody better. Like, I know that the options that are realistic may not be the best, but at some point, you gotta try somebody different. He's not even trying to do good stuff. He just fucking over everybody and he bails. But not only that, at this point, it's very clear you have to stop this nonsense where the party out of power can just dictate funding for the government. That is insane. I get for some legislation you need 60 votes in the Senate. Fine, I get the reasoning behind that. But why can the party out of power just dictate the budget? That is crazy. Like they could dictate the budget however the hell they want to, and they could shut down the government if they want to, if they want to screw over the party in power and fuck over millions of people and politically benefit from it. Why? If we have shutdowns, why don't they just use the budget of the last year? Or if you can't keep it, make it like an automatic 10% cut until it's agreed to or something. The current system clearly has big issues with it, and the party out of power can abuse the hell out of it and fuck over millions of people and essentially hold the entire country hostage and say, we're not going to fund DHS until you give us everything we want. And hold the entire country hostage and basically tell people, vote for us, or we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. We should not have to deal with that shit. It should be a simple majority in both chambers for funding of any sorts, and that's it. So if you can't fully nuke the filibuster, I think it's becoming more apparent that you got to at least nuke it for financial reasons or for funding or whatever. None of this shit of, oh, the party out of power can shut down the entire government, they can't pass anything, and they can hold everybody hostage. No. Get rid of that. That is insane. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.